The wind howled low across the dust-blown street, carrying with it the smell of sweat, gun oil, and something worse, fear. Wooden boards creaked under the afternoon sun, and somewhere in the distance, a saloon piano hit a wrong note, then fell silent. Every man in town felt it. Something was about to happen. Welcome to Frontier Echoes, the place where the forgotten voices of the Wild West rise again, where legends breathe, and where one moment can change history forever. No one remembered exactly when the stranger rode in. Some said it was just past noon. Others swore it was closer to evening. But everyone agreed on one thing: the moment he appeared at the edge of town, the air itself seemed to tighten. His horse was coal-black, its flanks scarred and tired, like it had seen more miles than mercy. The rider sat tall in the saddle, unmoving, his hat pulled low enough to hide his eyes. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. The town of Red Hollow had seen trouble before. Outlaws passed through. Drunks started fights. Guns were drawn and blood was spilled. But this was different. This wasn't chaos stumbling in from the desert. This was something calm. Measured. Dangerous. The stranger rode straight down Main Street, past the general store, past the barber shop, past the saloon where laughter had died the instant he came into view. Men stepped back into doorways. Women pulled children inside. A dog that had been barking moments earlier slunk away with its tail between its legs. And standing at the far end of the street, near the jailhouse, was Sheriff Caleb Morgan. Sheriff Morgan had worn the badge for nearly 10 years. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and eyes that had stared down killers before. He believed in order, in rules, and in the idea that fear belonged to criminals, not lawmen. Red Hollow was his town. And no stranger, no matter how quiet or confident, was going to change that. The sheriff adjusted his gun belt and stepped forward. The stranger stopped his horse in the middle of the street. He swung down slow, boots hitting the dirt with a soft thud. Still, he didn't lift his head. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The silence stretched, heavy enough to crush steel. Finally, Sheriff Morgan broke it. "You best state your business," he said, voice steady but loud enough for the whole town to hear. The stranger slowly raised his head. That was when people noticed his eyes. They weren't wild. They weren't angry. They were empty. Cold. Like he'd already seen every bad ending this world had to offer and stopped caring which one came next. He looked directly at the sheriff. And he stared. No words. No movement. Just that stare. Sheriff Morgan felt it hit him like a fist to the chest. This wasn't defiance. This wasn't arrogance. This was judgment. As if the stranger wasn't afraid of the law because he had already lived outside it for so long that it meant nothing. "I asked you a question," the sheriff said again, hand drifting closer to his revolver. Still, the stranger didn't speak. A bead of sweat rolled down the sheriff's temple. He had faced men who begged. Men who cursed. Men who reached for their guns too fast and paid for it. But he had never faced a man who simply stared him down like this. Finally, the stranger spoke. "I'm looking for a man," he said, voice low and rough, like gravel dragged across wood. Sheriff Morgan narrowed his eyes. "Red Hollow's full of men. You'll need to be more specific." The stranger's gaze never left the sheriff. "A man who hides behind a badge," he said. "And a lie." A murmur rippled through the crowd watching from behind windows and door frames. Sheriff Morgan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You accusing me of something?" the sheriff asked. The stranger tilted his head slightly. "I'm accusing you of remembering." The sheriff laughed, sharp and forced. "I don't know you, friend. And I don't like riddles. If you've got business, speak it. If not, move along." The stranger reached into his coat. Half the town gasped. A few men flinched, already imagining the sound of gunfire. But he didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a small, worn object and held it up between two fingers. A silver deputy's star. It was old. Scratched. Dented. But unmistakable. Sheriff Morgan's face went pale. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. The stranger's voice dropped even lower. "From a grave that shouldn't exist." The memory came crashing back into the sheriff's mind whether he wanted it or not. 15 years earlier. A different town. A different badge. A robbery gone wrong. Shots fired in the dark. And a young deputy who never made it home. The official story said the deputy had been killed by outlaws. The truth was buried deep in the desert. Sheriff Morgan's hand trembled near his gun. "You best leave," he said. "Now." The stranger shook his head slowly. "I already left," he said. "A long time ago. I just came back for what's owed." The tension snapped. Sheriff Morgan drew first. The sound of the gunshot echoed like thunder, ripping through the silence. The bullet tore through the air where the stranger's head had been a heartbeat earlier. The stranger moved faster than anyone thought possible. His hand flashed to his holster. One shot. Clean. Final. Sheriff Morgan staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief, then collapsed into the dirt. The badge hit the ground with a dull clink. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. People screamed. Men shouted. Someone ran for cover. But the stranger stood still, gun lowered, breathing steady. He looked down at the fallen sheriff, then at the watching town. "I didn't come for you," he said quietly. "I came for the truth." No one stopped him as he walked past the body, mounted his horse, and rode out of Red Hollow. By nightfall, the town was changed forever. They found the old records. The missing reports. The lies stitched together to protect a man who wore a badge but had no honor. The truth spread fast, as truth always does when it finally breaks free. And the name of the stranger? No one ever learned it. Some said he was the dead deputy's brother. Others claimed he was a former lawman himself, betrayed by the system he once served. A few whispered he was something darker, something the frontier itself had sent to balance the scales. But everyone agreed on one thing. The day he stared the sheriff down was the day the Wild West remembered that badges don't make men honest. Choices do. And sometimes, the past rides back into town whether you're ready for it or not. If you want to hear more stories where legends, justice, and blood collide under the endless western sky, stay with Frontier Echoes, because the frontier never forgets.